Q9340. An applicant who is scheduled for a practical test for an airline transport pilot certificate in an aircraft needs A. A first-class medical certificate. B. At least a current third-class medical certificate. C. A second-class medical certificate. The correct answer is B. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, an applicant who is scheduled for a practical test for an airline transport pilot certificate in an aircraft needs at least a current third-class medical certificate. A first-class medical certificate is required for pilots who exercise airline transport pilot (ATP) privileges, that is, those flying scheduled airliners and other pilots whose employers require this level of certification. A second-class medical is required for pilots who fly commercially in operations such as crop dusting, delivering canceled checks, or carrying passengers or cargo for hire. A third-class medical certificate is appropriate for student pilots, recreational pilots, and private pilots who fly for pleasure or personal business, but not for hire. 8191. The Age 65 rule of 14 CFR Part 121 applies to A. Any required pilot crew member. B. Any flight crew member. C. The pilot in command only. The correct answer is A. Under 14 CFR Part 121, which governs the operation of scheduled air carriers, there is a rule commonly known as the Age 65 rule. This rule sets an age limitation for pilots serving as required crew members on scheduled airline flights. According to the rule, a pilot who has reached the age of 65 is no longer eligible to serve as a required crew member on a flight conducted under 14 CFR Part 121. This means that once a pilot reaches the age of 65, they cannot serve as a pilot on scheduled airline flights. It's important to note that this rule applies to any required pilot crew member, regardless of their position or role within the flight crew. It is not limited to the pilot in command only or specific flight crew members. The rule is based on age and is intended to ensure the safety and well-being of passengers by establishing an age limit for pilots serving in certain operational roles within scheduled air carrier operations. 8189. Under which condition is a flight engineer required as a flight crew member in 14 CFR Part 121 operations? A. If the airplane is being flown on proving flights, with revenue cargo aboard. B. If the airplane is powered by more than 2 turbine engines. C. If required by the airplane's type certificate. The correct answer is C. The reason is that the requirement for a flight engineer as a flight crew member in 14 CFR Part 121 operations is determined by the airplane's type certificate. The type certificate specifies the crew composition and any specific qualifications or roles required for operating the aircraft. If the type certificate specifies the presence of a flight engineer, then it becomes a mandatory requirement for operations conducted under 14 CFR Part 121. 8190. When the need for a flight engineer is determined by aircraft weight, what is the takeoff weight that requires a flight engineer? A. 80,000 pounds. B. More than 80,000 pounds. C. 300,000 pounds. The correct answer is B. The reason is that when the need for a flight engineer is determined by aircraft weight, the requirement for a flight engineer is triggered when the aircraft's takeoff weight exceeds 80,000 pounds. If the aircraft weighs 80,000 pounds or less, a flight engineer is not required. However, if the takeoff weight exceeds 80,000 pounds, a flight engineer is needed to assist with the operation and monitoring of the aircraft systems. 8212. An air carrier uses an airplane that is certified for operation with a flight crew of 2 pilots and 1 flight engineer. In case the flight engineer becomes incapacitated, A. At least 1 other flight crew member must be qualified to perform the flight engineer duties. B. 1 crew member must be qualified to perform the duties of the flight engineer. C. 1 pilot must be qualified and have a flight engineer certificate to perform the flight engineer duties. The correct answer is A. The reason is that in the scenario where an air carrier operates an airplane certified for operation with a flight crew of 2 pilots and 1 flight engineer, if the flight engineer becomes incapacitated, it is necessary to have at least one other flight crew member who is qualified to perform the flight engineer duties. This ensures that there are adequate personnel to handle the necessary tasks and responsibilities related to the flight engineer's role, even in the event of an incapacitation. This requirement helps maintain the safety and operational effectiveness of the aircraft during the flight.